in our time, God gave us, and the church approved Fatima, and Fatima
That's
is
right.
very timely. It is still not yet fully, accepted by the faithful and by the clergy. The message which God gave through Our Lady in Fatima, and it would be sufficient to fulfill what Our Lady asked in Fatima. Thanks be to God, the Pope finally consecrated Russia to her Immaculate Heart in the last March 25th. But we have always continued what Our Lady demanded, and she said that it is the will of God to give to our time, to the humankind and the church, a special spiritual help. And
Mm.
this is the devotion to the Immaculate Heart. And so we have to, for example, to spread this. So this we have to be I would advise you, all who are good Catholics, to be sober and not to be very much prey to every so-called private revelations.
That's exactly right. I'm really glad you brought up the consecration of Russia. So I believe that Pope Francis's consecration was valid. One of the things that convinced me was the studying. I used to work for the Fatima Center, and I know they've taken a different view. They sort of are saying that they don't believe it was valid, but nonetheless, over the years, the Fatima Center did lots of great research, and I was very grateful for all the things I learned there. But one of the reasons why I believe it was valid was because when I looked into the actual theology of how a consecration works. So what I did is I studied I call it the very high bar of sacramental theology. So how could a consecration of the Eucharist be valid? Which is, again, it's a very high bar. There are rubrics, there's tradition. It is very specific. It has to be done in a certain way. But then when you sort of go to just the prayerful consecration by a pope, a priest, even a parent of a child, for example, it's actually a little bit more, there's more wiggle room. I mean, if I, in the morning, if I say a consecration to St. Joseph, I could say something long and elaborate, but I could also just say, I consecrate myself to St. Joseph today. I'm very busy. I've got to make my children breakfast and I don't have time for a long one. But the point is, it's still valid as long as you've intended to consecrate a particular object or subject to a particular thing, so-and-so to the Immaculate Heart, whatever. So I don't think there's a question that it was actually valid. But one of the objections people will give us, and I want you to answer this because I get this all the time, is people will say things like, well, if it was done, why hasn't anything happened to prove it yet? I think this is a misunderstanding of what was actually promised, but perhaps you could elaborate on why that's not perhaps the best way to look at it.
This is again, we have to have the right understanding of the consecration, because this is not a sacrament. A
Right.
sacrament is operating instantly when the conditions are fulfilled of a sacrament. So we know the materia, let us say the Eucharist, bread and
Yes.
wine, when valid, and the words of the sacrament are spoken by the priest at the consecration, and he has the right intention to do what the church is doing, then instantly the consecration is happening instantly,
Right.
independently on the holiness of the priest. And so the same with baptism, the sacraments, they have an immediate objective working because they are sacraments. A consecration, uh, another consecration, or what the Pope is doing, it is a sacramental. So it's not a sacrament. In Latin, it's a sacramentale. It is a kind of intercession prayer. It is a work of the church directly, not of, of the God itself directly. It is a work of the church and depends on the prayers of the church. But in the eyes of God, it has an objective value because it is a work of the church, the
Mm-hmm.
consecration. It was not instituted by Christ, but by the church. But God gave to his church also the power to pronounce prayers and consecrations. So,
Hmm.
and therefore, the effect of such a consecration, which is not a sacrament, is not immediate. So, otherwise, it would be against the Catholic teaching itself. So we would be put on the same level the sacrament and a non-sacramental action. And then
Right.
the other aspect also, that people who are awaiting from this consecration of Fatima, which the Pope did, an immediate effect, they have, to my opinion, a deficient understanding of this, because it is a kind of understanding like a magic act. It's not a magic act. You do something and then it is produced. This attitude of these people, they are implicitly, it's a lack of faith. It is a lack of faith. They want immediately see the result.
Right.
But this is not Catholic. This is not Catholic. We have to leave to God the time. It's not in our, as our Lord said to the apostles before he was ascended to heaven, it is not upon you to know the times which the Father established in his wisdom. And the same I would say to these Catholics, it's not upon you to know exactly the time when the effect of the consecration which the Pope did in March will have its effect. It is upon God. The, our task was in the Pope to do what Our Lady asked, and then we will leave it to God in His wisdom. And also, maybe the effect should, it's not necessary that the effect would come immediately at once in a moment. The effects can also come gradually, step by step. Maybe God will operate in this way. We leave it to God.